All right, everyone, we are here with the legendary Jeff Gray. I don't know if that bothers you, but I had to say it. I'm personally, I don't know how to take that when people, treat me like I'm famous or something, because I'm just doing what I do because I can't stand not doing it. I just got to the point where I had to do it. Waited for many years to do it until my kids grew up and got out of the house, because I didn't want them to have to deal with some of the things we've seen people have to deal with. But this is Jeff Gray, and you probably know him from Honor Your Oath, Rights Investigation, and PINAC, Photography is Not a Crime. And for those of you that have never heard of him, shame on you. you must be new. Thanks for being here today. There's lots of things to talk about.
Great to be here. Great to be here. Thank you for interviewing me. I appreciate it.
Well, I don't remember if I've ever even seen you be interviewed any place before. If I have, I forgot. But I thought one of the things I was going to do is try to get in touch with some of the people that have been doing it for the most amount of time and have the most amount of experience. Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to try to share some knowledge, some of your knowledge, as best we can, and let people know more about you and EOG.
Right. It shouldn't be too long of an interview if you're going to share my knowledge. So.
Well, one of the topics, and let's go ahead and get that done, was your school board stuff.
Okay.
Because I know we talked about it. The people have been asking you. So if there's anything you want to share, their updates or whatever, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. A lot of people have been asking for an update on the school board situation. And the reason I really haven't done anything with a video on it is because it's just one of those things that's kind of hard to put a video on YouTube about it. It takes a long time to do it, I guess, too long of a video. But basically, for people that don't know, I have been making public records requests to my local school board here for safety items, safety documents, like the fire safety documents of for the school that my children go to, documents that would show if the fire safety equipment is working properly. They didn't give me the documents, so what I did is I filed a lawsuit against them for violating the public records law. Then they in turn turned around and sued me for malicious prosecution, I think is what it was, not malicious prosecution, but yeah, malicious prosecution and abuse of process. Basically, what turned out happening with that is we initially tried to get that dismissed on a SLAPP suit, because what they were trying to do is get the judge to prohibit me from making public records requests, get the judge to make me remove my videos from YouTube, and a few other nonsensical things. But
is that contempt of school board?
Yeah, contempt of school board. Contempt of the entity that I have discovered is the most powerful entity in any county, really, is the school board. They're more powerful than the sheriff's department, more ruthless than the sheriff's department or any other law enforcement agency. The school board is, they're pretty bad. But we discovered that it is prohibited by law for a public agency to sue an individual for malicious, I think it was malicious prosecution. I think that's what it was, malicious prosecution and abuse of process. It's actually prohibited by law for them to do that. It's a violation of the First Amendment. It's been ruled on over and over again in state courts and federal courts. So we filed a motion to dismiss, and before it went to court, the motion went to court, the school board contacted me. They wanted to dismiss the lawsuit. So we agreed. They dismissed the lawsuit after almost 2 years of litigation, costly and unnecessary litigation. They finally dismissed the lawsuit, and it's done. It's over. So. Only problem is I'm still trespassed from all school property and from the school safety zones of all the schools, which means that I can't come within 500 feet of any school.
Any school in the district or?
Any school in St. Johns County, the St. Johns County School District. And if you think about that, if you compare that like where the county where you live, think about how much of
Can't even drive by on the street.
Yeah. Where I live at my house, I have to, for me to go anywhere, I have to drive through at least 2 or 3 school zones to go anywhere on a normal trip. So it's, the whole thing was just ridiculous. But there's no litigation going on right now. The litigation is all ended. I'm not suing them right now, and they're not suing me. So
that boggles the mind. If that was here, then I had to go through that. I would have to go so far around everything, because there's probably 8 schools within a couple of miles here.
Right.
You know.
And it's not the school safety zone trespass. When they passed that legislation, it was designed to keep people like pedophiles, drug dealers, gang members. That was the intent of that law, was to keep those people from being within 500 feet of any school. It was not intended to be used against somebody who was making public records requests and investigating school district safety policies. And the other thing I was doing was filming their bus drivers not doing safety pre-trips and falsifying pre-trip reports. And that was the other thing I was doing.
Well, when you first got your first videos I saw, I'm going to move this over here where I can see this better to monitor the audio, so I know we're doing okay on the audio.
Okay.
The first videos I saw of you were like speed traps. Mm-hmm. Is that what got you, was your motivation in the first place, or is that just where you started?
Well, that was my motivation in the first place. There, as a truck driver here in the Northeast Florida area, I drove through a lot of these little towns that were basically speed trap towns. 2 of them in particular, Waldo and Lottie, are actually nationally known speed traps. AAA for the longest time put up billboards along the Interstate 301 or Highway 301 that runs through those towns, Lottie and Waldo. They put up billboards warning people that they were speed traps. So that's how bad they were. And driving a truck, I used to drive through there and see them stopping people all the time and searching their vehicles and just basically harassing people. And I was convinced that they weren't doing it for safety purposes. They were doing it more for revenue purposes. And so that's how I started. And my whole intention with that was to go out there, start a YouTube channel, go out there and document where the cops are hiding in those towns, and put it out there so people could see, for the dual purpose of getting people to slow down through those towns to drive safely, and most importantly, keep them from getting stopped and getting looted by the guys that they call them pirates in this town, Waldo and Lottie. And there was the other town, Hampton, which was actually worse than Lottie and Waldo. These are all cities in Florida that are on Interstate 301, kind of the north central Florida area, and they're all within 20 miles of each other going real. Since I put those videos out and since I started my YouTube channel, Waldo and Hampton have been shut down for illegal practices. They no longer have police forces, and they no longer are out there looting people, is what I call it.
Who says what we do doesn't make a difference?
Right. I mean, I can't take credit for that. I mean, I guess I had a little bit of a part in that, but they basically brought it on themselves. They just got carried away with it and really got the attention, the national attention, like I said. And they both got, the police department in Waldo got disbanded, and as well as the police department in Hampton got disbanded. Lottie is still there, but they're not out there writing as many tickets as they used to. They've really kind of toned down their activity with speeding tickets.
Well, they have a town near here called Selma, Texas. All right. And fact, I think they were using one or two songs about them, about being a speed trap. And the state came back, I think, if I remember correctly, they put signs up on the highway saying that it was a speed trap. And then eventually, if I remember correctly, they got their right to be able to write tickets on the highway. They could write it on the excess roads, but not on the highways anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they still sit on the side of that highway all the damn time waiting for people to come off the ramp or come down the excess road. And I don't know if that still is in play where they can't write tickets on the highway, but I'm not sure.
And that's all these little cities do that are up in Georgia. If you go up 75, the towns of like Adel, you go through Valdosta, the sheriff's department, but mostly it's these little towns. I'm sorry, one of my animals is in there, decided to make a lot of noise. And these little cities, they don't even patrol their cities. They don't do anything in their cities. They sit there and put their whole police force up on the interstate, and all they do is sit there and give people speeding tickets all day.
No, that was like Selma. I think they got maybe a mile or a mile and a half, as long as they are, and then that's what they would do. They just sit on that damn road giving people tickets.
Matter of fact, Lottie was the first time I ever got arrested was in Lottie. I was standing alongside the highway, Interstate 301, and Highway 301, with a sign that said "Speed Trap Ahead," and they came out there and arrested me. Of course, those charges were dropped. Never went to trial. Never went even went to the courts. The district attorney or whatever you call him there saw the video, and he actually, I talked to him on the phone. He said the whole thing was ridiculous. He dropped the charges. So.
Yeah, well, when I growing up, when about the time Selma and all that, they were talking about, I would have thought that they would have not only written you a ticket, but probably beat the shit out of you for going out there with a sign.
Yeah, I think if I would not have had a camera, I think that's probably what would happen. They were the first police department I filmed. This video has never been seen because at the time all I had was an old, I guess you call analog cassette camcorder, the little bitty, the small cassettes that you put in there.
Yeah.
And the first time I ever pointed a camera at a law enforcement officer, I was surrounded by 4 or 5 of them. And it was a pretty scary experience for my first experience. They were.
When was that?
Give me the camera. Give me the camera. Huh?
When was that? What year about?
It was late 2011, early 2012.
Okay, because that was going to be one of you. That's 2 of the questions down already. When was the first time you got arrested, and when did you get started? So.
Yeah, I got arrested. The first arrest that I've ever had was in April of 2012. That was in Lottie. Yeah. It was quite an experience.
Well, the videoing of the speed traps, how did that evolve into photography is not a crime and EOG and all that?
I think it was all just sort of an organic thing that was happening at the time. There was a lot of, YouTube was kind of getting out there and getting more popular. People were starting channels. As a matter of fact, my original inspiration for getting out there and doing this, along with seeing these speed traps and everything as I was driving the truck, but a guy named David Ridley. I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah.
David Ridley, and in the border patrol or the border crossing, the checkpoints, inland border checkpoints. Those guys that were out there doing that, I love those videos. And David Ridley, the one video that he did years ago.
Oh, you can see it. Stringer.
Are you a stringer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Those are fun. But David Ridley, he had that one video where he was walking to some sort of free keen meeting or something like that, and he was open carrying. He was stopped by a law enforcement officer, and the cops kept asking questions, and David Ridley was on the phone with Porcupine 911 or whatever it was, and he was every question the cop would ask him, David Ridley would say, "I'm not answering. No, I'm not going to answer that. No, I'm not going to answer that." That's what kind of got it going. And then Carlos, he was arrested down in Miami. He started a blog. That was how Pennac started, was covering his own arrest. He was out there taking photographs for the Miami Herald. And then there was Cop Block with Ademo and Pete. And it all just kind of came together that way. I started my Honor Your Oath channel. I consider top block and photography is not a crime, higher levels of me, I consider photography is not a crime to be that. The most respectful organization with Carlos and top block as well. And they started putting my videos up, and then we all just kind of became friends and we all worked together.
Where did EOG come in?
Thomas, he came in. He saw my video that I did at the Jacksonville Transportation Authority, and him being dependent on public transportation and dealing with JTA, the Jacksonville Transportation Authority, he saw that video and he was really inspired by it. He wanted to meet me because of that. He wanted to do some work with JTA, filming them and capturing some of the stuff that they do wrong, bus drivers and how they treat people. And that's how that happened. He sent me a message on YouTube. I responded. He wanted me to meet him downtown Jacksonville at one of the Jacksonville Transportation Authority the Skyway train stations they have down there, and we met there and we just started working together from there.
Well, I'm going to answer this for myself first, everybody. I've always had a problem with authority figures. I've always resisted. Have you always been like that, or it was just you got fed up this one time and you had enough and that started it?
No, it wasn't always like that. As a matter of fact, you go back 2008 or so and years before that, I was one of the people that would be on here making comments like, you're such a loser. Why are you filming the cops? Why don't you get a job? Just do what the cops say and nothing bad will happen. Just do what you're told. That's pretty much the way I was. And then I started getting out there and filming the cops, pointing cameras at cops and seeing the way they reacted to you and how they lie on their reports, how they abuse their authority, and it just kind of grew from there. It was such an eye opener to see, because I was like most people. I believe that the majority of cops are good cops, they're good people, they're heroes. There's only a few bad apples, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it now that I've had my own personal experiences with law enforcement over the past since 2011, 7 years. I'm convinced that there's only a few good cops, and the majority of them are lying dirtbags.
Yeah, I am too. I
don't hate cops. A lot of people say I hate cops.
Yeah,
I don't hate them. I just think they're a bunch of lying dirtbags. That's all, but I don't hate them.
Well, I always knew there was a bunch of bad cops, and I always knew there was a lot more than people thought. I just didn't know how bad it was, and we talk about bad cops, and I guess it kind of depends on what your definition of bad cop is. And I think I've gone through this before, and I'm sure it's come up with you, and I have a problem with this because I still feel like I've met a few good cops, but I know that those ones that I feel like are pretty good cops still don't turn in the bad ones. And the real definition that I think belongs there to determine a bad cop is not only what they've done, but if they see another cop doing something they shouldn't be doing, then they should be treating them the same way they treat us. Turn them in, write them a ticket, and you don't see that hardly ever. In fact, they will go out of their way to protect each other.
And there's a reason why the good cops, the ones that if it's a good cop and they do report a bad cop, what happens to them? They're the ones that you wind up getting disciplined and fired and sent down the road or set up or put in jail themselves. So what's the benefit for them doing it? It's a really, really corrupt system. They all look out for each other. And I'm not saying that, again, not all cops are bad. Most cops are bad.
Yeah.
Most cops are liars. Most cops will not go through their career without falsely imprisoning somebody.
Quite often.
Lying on a report. Putting somebody in jail that they know didn't do what they did.
Write them a ticket because you didn't kiss my butt.
Yeah. I don't know how a law enforcement officer can sit around their dinner table at night with their family, knowing that they've arrested somebody and lied on a report, went through the prosecution and have somebody actually get convicted. And put,
Well, there's a police officer that I've known forever, and it finally got to him. I think I don't know if he retired because of the mental problem he developed, the depression, where he doesn't want to go anywhere, do anything at all. He barely leaves his room. I don't know. This was a couple years ago that started. I haven't seen or heard from him in years now, but I think that's what got to him. He probably convinced himself all those years that he was doing a good job, and over the years he realized he wasn't, and it finally, got to him. Yeah. And there was someplace else I was leading with that, but I forgot where it was. But I think I think that says it right there, probably. Mm-hmm. But if the topic about the money part, they're going to lose their job, and that means money. All right. Mm-hmm. Well, when you go into the police, you know that you're going to take that oath. All right. Mm-hmm. And if that oath, if a paycheck is more important than your oath, then you probably shouldn't be in that job. I mean, that's there. And if you are that willing to give up your integrity for money, I just don't see it. And I know some people will argue, well, you probably would do this, that, and the other for your job. I have quit jobs. I have told bosses to stick it, or just plain, I won't do it because it went against it. I couldn't. It was either illegal, immoral, or just plain went against, my personal beliefs.
Right.
And I've done it. I've taken that hit. But I guess some of the salaries we see with these police officers, I've never had to give up $100,000 or $200,000 a year job either. So
right.
I'll give them a way out there, but damn, that's ridiculous.
And the other big problem in the United States, and most people are aware of this, that's going to be talking, kind of preach to the choir, I guess, when we're doing an interview like this. But
we are seen by some new people quite a bit.
The double standards. Here locally, a lot of people are familiar with what happened to my friend Mike Hoffman. He was arrested out at the Jacksonville Transportation Authority, which is a government-run entity. It's public property. He was holding a sign that said, F the TSA. It didn't say F-U-C-K the TSA. It didn't say fire the TSA. It just F, asterisk, exclamation point, the TSA. He was arrested for trespassing on private property.
Right.
The first thing that they said in the court was, Your Honor, all JTA, Jacksonville Aviation Authority property is going to be public property. They admitted right off the bat. As far as I'm concerned, the case should have been thrown out right there. That's why Mike was arrested. But they said they went after him, put a motion limited, basically a gag order on Eric Friday and Mike Hoffman. Eric Friday was Mike Hoffman's attorney, telling them that they could not mention the First Amendment in the courtroom. That was their defense, the First Amendment. They prevented them from even saying anything about the First Amendment. He wound up going to jail for months. But here recently, we've had two law enforcement officers out. They were actually arrested. One was going around falsely imprisoning people, lying on official reports, putting people in jail, saying that he was finding methamphetamine, but he was only finding aspirin. He knew it was aspirin. He was falsifying the written reports. He was falsifying the drug reports. He's put dozens of innocent people in prison. Yep. Dozens of people's lives, dozens of families' lives. And the guy gets a plea deal, and all he does is get probation. That's it. That's all he got, probation and community service.
Yeah.
And Mike Hoffman spends 6 months in jail for holding a sign for exercising his First Amendment protected right.
Yeah, and Bio, he's how many days now he's been in solitary for pissing off a judge?
Yeah.
Basically, that would come down to, don't piss off the judge because they will do a number on you.
He was out there being critical of the judiciary, out there on the courthouse grounds, and he got arrested, and they said, well, here's how we're going to get him. And that courthouse up there in Jacksonville is a corrupt courthouse. Definitely.
Yeah,
I don't want to get arrested in Jacksonville. No.
I have never believed in the court system, but it came to, I guess, I don't know why. I just always been this way. I mean, since early high school or even maybe before that, I don't really remember exactly where it started, but there also was a time when I was pretty young that I believed in the death penalty. But then once I started realizing how corrupt this system is, no, I'm not, because how many of those people were falsely, false charges, false documents,
Right.
judges went along with it or even helped get them,
Yeah, withheld evidence that wouldn't show the evidence that proved their innocence.
Manipulated the evidence or in the court process to get what,
Mhm.
and DAs, they don't care about the right or the wrong of it. They just care about their damn record.
Right.
Once they latch onto something, that's it. I don't care if it's right, wrong, or someplace in between. If I come up with evidence that proves him innocent, I'm gonna hide it. I'm not gonna help him. I want my damn conviction.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we got that kind of shit going on, we're not going to get very far. But
Right.
we're starting in basically our own backyards wherever we live, and that's where you start. And the movement back to in the '60s, and so to get rid of Vietnam, it started out small. And it took many years. I don't like how a lot of how it was accomplished, some of the things they would say, but it got it accomplished at least. And I'm hoping that we just keep growing like we have been, because, look, when you started, how few of us there were doing this kind of stuff. And you've seen, what am I doing? Putting up new auditors 2-3 times a week, a lot of times, and sometimes more.
Mm-hmm.
So we're growing, and I haven't even found them all. There's some I don't put up because there's so many other bigger, fairly decent sized channels, some bigger, some, almost as big, some that are doing it, that I figured they've already, everybody knows about them already. There's no reason for me to do the video. I'll move on to somebody new because I only have a certain amount of time anyway.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you doing that for those guys. And I'll tell you, one of the things when I started out is, I was doing this here in my local area, Northeast Florida area. When I first started, it was basically, I had the stuff that I went and planned and did was with the speed traps in Lottie and Waldo and Hampton. But most of the interactions you see in my early videos were just me when I was driving home from work and I saw, for example, Fish and Wildlife, a Florida Fish and Wildlife officers out there checking people's licenses and things like that. I would just stop and film it. There was a point to this. Oh, yeah. But back when I first started, I would get a lot of messages, personal messages on YouTube, because back then that's pretty much all there was. And they would say, Jeff, you need to come to Anchorage, Alaska. We got all kind of problems up here. Jeff, you need to come, to Maine or somewhere really, really far away. And I was like, I wish I could, but I just don't have the money or the time to do that. But I would always tell them, start doing this on your own in your own area. And I am really happy to see that there are so many other people out there that are going out and doing these audits, or I call them civil rights investigations now, to ensure our rights are being respected. So this is good. It's good that all this is happening. It's good that there's PNP News that's putting stuff up and interviewing people and putting videos out there to promote people. And it's good that there's an attorney out there that has a whole YouTube channel dedicated to just critiquing auditors. It's really grown. It's grown. So it's pretty interesting. But I'm very happy that there's a lot of people out there doing this now.
Yeah, and shoot, where was it going to go? I was going to go through, and I looked over at my notes, and I lost where I was going with that. So anyway, we're growing, and what you were talking about is when you first started. People were asking you to go around different places. Well, when I first started, I started shortly after News Now, and about and Jack and Todd, you know, they all started just before me, but we would get a lot of requests to go here and go there. And one day, News Now Ohio, not 2.0, but the News Now Ohio, he calls me and we start talking, and I guess we've been talking almost 2 years now, a year and a half. And he's been trying to build up that area. And look where it's at. I think they got 10, 12 of them up there now.
Oh, wow.
12 of them in the Ohio area, not just Ohio, but that area. So just in that area, they got all those. And I've seen a lot of other places, man, just grow leaps and bounds. California's going crazy. We got a bunch now here in Texas. I'm glad I'm seeing that, because, you know, over time, there's going to be a lot of the guys that have been doing it for a while going to bow out. Either they've got burned out from it. They've been chased out because the financial end of it. We've seen people lose their jobs and basically get to the point where they can't even be hired because the cops have, you know, just made their record look so damn bad that nobody wants to hire them.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. I would like to say, if you're going to get started doing this, you know, it's got its downside. It's risky. You're putting yourself at risk. You're putting your livelihood at risk. You're putting your freedom at risk. You're putting your life at risk. You go out there, you've got to be really careful. You got to try to make sure that what you're doing is lawful. You got to protect yourself. Make sure you're there lawfully. Make sure the place you're at is lawful. Because you know, and here's the thing: these law enforcement officers in Florida and the southeastern region of the United States, they know I'm not a terrorist. They know I'm not a terrorist. They know I'm not a sovereign citizen. You know, they bring up, they try to say you could be a pedophile. You know, one of the things I always like to say, you know, if you got a camera, you could be a pedophile, you could be a terrorist, you know, and all this stuff. They know that I'm not any of this stuff, but yet they still circulate these bulletins and these memos, and they put all these, you know, the Florida Fusion Center with Florida State Law Enforcement, Federal Law Enforcement, FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, local law enforcement agencies, and their terrorism, joint terrorism task force, and they send all these memos around talking about, beyond, you know, if you see this man, you know, Jeff Gray, he takes photographs of government buildings and public officials. But I guess my point is they know I'm not a terrorist. They know I'm not any of that stuff, but they still go through the
retaliation, the
theater. They go through all the theater, and it's retaliation, right? And spread all this stuff around. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is, you put yourself at a lot of risk. So, you know, if you're going to do it, really think about it before you go out there. I'm not trying to discourage anybody. I'm just trying to be straightforward.
Yeah, well, we got to be honest with people. Be aware of what can happen to you. If you know, I think most people that get started doing this, they've watched a bunch of these videos and they have a pretty good understanding of what can happen to them. But I'll reiterate, be aware of what can happen to you, because they will try to ruin your life. Yeah. And it's not by throwing you in the can forever. It's, you know, one thing or another. And we've already seen one photographer get shot a while back. You know, we've seen how many times they've
by a cop who knew who he was.
Yeah,
right. Isn't that who the guy? They was like, "Why did you shoot me?" You know, it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know." Man,
you know, and I saw that video, and I think he really was. He overreacted, and I think he really was upset that he shot the guy. But if you're that scared, if your butt puckers that much every time you go out and see something, then you shouldn't be on the job. You shouldn't be doing something else.
Yeah. Law enforcement officers, they're, depending on what scenario is beneficial to them, they're either the bravest, most well-trained heroes that's ever breathed air, or they're in fear for their lives. You know, so what is it? Are you guys brave and heroes, you know, or are you always scared, running around scared and trigger happy, one, you know, shooting people that, you know, we see this happening all the time out there. These cops shooting people that have absolutely no threat. It's pretty scary stuff.
Also, part of what you were doing, and I haven't seen it lately. I've watched so many of your videos, and they're not all in a row lately, to kind of get ideas of what to talk about. That I kind of lost track. But a lot of what you were doing, at least for a while, was the David system. You were coming down on them for, you know, using the David system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could we kind of go over that? Your thoughts on
Sure.
them misusing it?
Sure. Are you going now?
Go ahead. I really haven't spent that much time on it, so I don't even know where to start on it. I understand what it is and all that, but I haven't really spent much time on it.
Well, there's the it's called the Driver Privacy Protection Act. It's supposed to prevent law enforcement from using the driver and information vehicle database, the DAVID, Driver and Vehicle Information Database, for purposes other than legitimate law enforcement purposes. And so in other words, they're not really supposed to be using it just for the heck of it to find out if there's a good-looking girl going down the road. They get their tag and they pull it up and find out where she lives and try to ask her for a date, things like that. And they were basically just running. I did a public records request to the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles to find out how many times my David information had been accessed, and it was accessed over 200 times from like in a 2-year period. It was accessed over 200 times by more than 30 different law enforcement agencies. A lot of times it was places I'd never been to, was never been to at all, never been talked to any of the officers, never been there to do any kind of a civil rights investigation or an audit. And but I can tell you that I did file a lawsuit against Duval County, St. Johns County, and Bradford County, I believe, over the David hits that they did on me that seemed illegitimate. All right, so in other words, it was 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and I wasn't there or whatever. But I can tell you all that the law enforcement officers have to do, and they get away with this, to say they did it for officer safety reasons. We got a memo about this guy from the Department of Homeland Security and the Florida Fusion Center. So I wanted to see who he was and what he looked like. So if I ever encountered him, I would know, whatever.
Now to pull my gun out and get ready to shoot.
Yeah. So even with the state trooper that pulled over the Miami law enforcement officer down there in Miami a few years ago, the Miami cop was off duty. He was doing like 130 miles an hour going to his moonlighting job. And the female state trooper was trying to stop him, and he wouldn't stop for miles and miles and miles. So finally, when she got him pulled over, she held him at gunpoint, put him in cuffs, and arrested him for speeding because he wouldn't stop. Well, she was being retaliated against. There were unmarked cruisers sitting in. She lived in a cul-de-sac.
This one, yeah.
There was unmarked cruisers sitting at her cul-de-sac all night long. People were ordering pizza and sending it to her house and Chinese food and just other, churlish, childish type of harassment and intimidation. So she did the same thing. She did a public records request to the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles to get how many times her David had been hit, and she found out it was a lot, right? So she started filing these lawsuits, and she was winning. She was beating all these counties. Most of them were settling because they knew they screwed up. But finally, all it took was one officer to say, hey, I did it for officer safety reasons. She pulled a gun on another cop. She might be crazy. We need to know who she is and what she looks like. And once he started doing that, this is the way I understand it anyway, all the other law enforcement agencies were like, oh, that's all we got to say. So she kept losing her Driver Privacy Protection Act lawsuits. She had to quit suing because of that. So that's all I got to say. So I mean, unless it's a situation where it's so blatant, I think it's a violation for them to be sitting there. Say they see a video of mine or any other auditor on YouTube, and they say, "Oh, I want to find out who this guy is, what he's up to, where he lives, and all this stuff." I don't think that's a legitimate purpose for it, because we're engaged in constitutionally protected activity, safeguarded by the First Amendment. We're not suspected of a crime. And I don't think they have any business doing it. But the courts have said it's okay for them to do it. So, yeah, that's the way it is.
Yeah. What can you expect from a corrupted system? I mean, if they find themselves innocent of crimes all the time, I investigated it, and just because you shot that guy 18 times and it was, you know, he only had a 6-shooter. You know, he had to reload. It was on accident. You know?
One of the best things that I did involved with the David cases was there's a local news station, Channel 4 News in Jacksonville, News 4 Jax. And I contacted Lindsay Gardner, who was their investigative team leader. And I pitched the idea to her. I said, hey, have you guys, I think she had heard about my David hits and she was interested in that. And I pitched the idea to her. I said, you know, because a lot of these local news stations, they have these really, really beautiful women that work there, right? You know, beautiful women that work there. And I said, I'll guarantee you, if you run, if you check with the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle for the really attractive female workers that you have in News 4 Jax, I guarantee you, you will find that law enforcement has been running their stuff, their tag and their David information illegally. She's like, that's a great idea. So she did it. They got the results. And it was amazing. There's Joy Purdy. She's one of the anchors. She's an attractive female. She's a really nice person. She's like one of the anchors. Her stuff is being run by a guy here in St. Johns County, just dozens of times. He said, "Oh, it was for training purposes. There was a Florida Department of Children and Family Services who was running the David information of like 4 or 5 of the news employees there at Channel 4 News. And she got in trouble for that and got fired over it. So, yeah, there's been, it was pretty interesting working with them about that. Well, I mean, they do it all the time. They do any news person that's watching this, you know, if there's anybody that works in the local news stations anywhere in the country, go in there and do a public records request and find out how many times your information has been ran. I bet you will find out that these cops are sitting there watching a story, or they see you and they think you're a pretty reporter or whatever, and I guarantee you they're sitting there. There's one of them at least that are sitting there running your information. They do it all the time. They get away with it all the time.
Well, shortly back on the topic of know what you're getting into and the retaliation of the cops. One of the reasons that I mentioned earlier was I didn't want the kids to go through, you know, that's why, what could happen. That's why I waited a while to get to do this. And that because they will get the Child Protective Services on your ass. And I think you probably went through some of that, if I remember right.
I did. I mean, I can't prove who it was because they have this, they can make anonymous reports. I think it was either my neighbor or it was one of the law enforcement officers that called and complained that I was shooting a BB gun with my children is basically what it was. They called, anonymous tip. It launched a Department of Children and Families investigation. They went to the school where my children were at school. Without my consent or even without my knowledge, they pulled my kids out of class. They interrogated them. They came to my house and interviewed me, and I call it an interrogation. And yeah, that's one of the means of retaliation that they can use against us, against anybody who is trying to hold government accountable.
Yeah, and one going through that right now. They're using that to retaliate against them.
Yeah, and I can tell you,
it was an incident that I could see why they said something, but they're taking it too far. I mean, the kid accidentally got out the front door by accident for, you know, when mama was turned her back or something, you know.
Yeah.
And so I can see how that would get their attention, but they've gone too far with it and they're trying to use it against him to get him, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we, you know, I mean, we keep our house clean and everything. We feed our kids, you know, we're good parents. But it was really a good situation there because we had just, the whole family, we had just done a spring cleaning of our house. Our house was spotless. I mean, it was spotless. And we had just spent like $400 and something on groceries. I mean, we always have groceries in here and everything, but we had just spent $400 on groceries. I mean, when she went around the house and she was looking in the refrigerator, the investigator, I mean, it was like food was falling out of the refrigerator, food was falling out of the pantries. And I keep my firearms locked up and secured, except for the one that I carry. But so I mean, she was like, really quickly, she said, "You guys are fine. There's nothing here. There's nothing to any of these claims." So,
well, that kind of brings up this. you know, there's a saying about, and I'm going to say it nicely, you know, don't poop in your own backyard.
Yeah.
So when you start doing this, a lot of people, and I've said it myself, don't do it in your own backyard, because that retaliation is very local, but and it's easy for them to do, but that's not going to stop, you know, a town 10 miles, 20 miles from here. They'll just call up the police department and say, this guy's messing with us, go mess with him. You know, they can still do it, but it's probably still best not to do it in your own backyard.
Which I've done, which I have done with my school board, with
you have
the sheriff's department around here. And it's, you know, it's, at first I tried not to do it, but there was just things that kept compelling me to check on things, you know.
Well, and I think it's a natural place to start, because that's where you know what's going on in your town, and it pisses you off, and that's where you're going to start.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons, you know, I keep saying that, you know, don't poop in your own backyard, but it doesn't matter where you're going to start. They're probably going to come after you anyway and use your town to do it.
Right.
So,
talked about retaliation at your job, people losing their jobs. I have had, I'm trying to say this without getting anybody in trouble. One of my old bosses, we knew each other pretty well. We came up, he came up worked his way up to a supervisor, and I was a truck driver. We knew each other, and he knew me as a good worker. I guess he considered me to be a pretty good guy. So when he got in the supervisor position, he had been there for about a year before I started launch my YouTube channel in late 2011. Well, he would come to me and say, "Hey, I'm getting calls from law enforcement about you. They're basically trying to get me to fire you, basically." But since we were good friends, he said, "I know you're not doing anything wrong. As long as you're not doing it while you're on the clock or while you're on the job, you'll be fine." But what I guess my point is there is that, yeah, that they do. They call your job. They try to get you fired. They try to screw with you.
And some places will give into that because they don't want the hassle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure there's companies out there that have things that they do that if the police don't like them, they're going to make it, you know, rough for that company. So they'll fire you instead of having to deal with that.
And that's okay. So yeah, let's go a little bit deeper into this.
Yeah,
that's one of the things. I don't know if people really understand. You know, you get the comments on YouTube, and I take comments with a grain of salt. I really appreciate everybody that watches and makes comments. Don't get me wrong, but people are, why do you give them so much information? Why do you tell them your first name? Why do you tell them that you work for Pinnack News? And why do you tell them what you're doing? The most important thing when you're out there is you're putting yourself at risk for being arrested, prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced to jail time. So when you go out there, you got to make sure you're there lawfully. You know, you're lawfully present. It's best to be on a public sidewalk. I call the public sidewalk the Golden Brick Road. If you can go film from a public sidewalk, whatever your subject is that you're filming, try to do it from the public sidewalk. But when they come up to me, I've learned in the beginning I wouldn't give them any information, but I've learned through litigation and through arrest and things like that, some of the stuff they say, it's best to go ahead and just tell them. You can do it the way you want to, but the way I do it is I like to tell them my first name, Jeff. I don't give them my last name. I don't give them my ID. My name is Jeff. I'm an investigative journalist with Pinnack News Service. I'm conducting a civil rights investigation, or I'm gathering content for a story about a civil rights investigation. Just tell them that. And that's all I tell them. That right there, any argument later on in court, it's gonna make you, if you're facing criminal charges and you're trying to beat it, you want to look like the reasonable person, the calm person, the rational person.
Yes.
And you're giving them the information that you need. So you've got to protect yourself first from being prosecuted and convicted of some BS crime, of some non-crime that you didn't commit. If you're out there yelling and screaming and looking crazy, the jury is going to look at you and say, this guy's crazy, and you're going to wind up going to jail. And if you give them just that little bit of information, my name is Jeff. I'm an investigative journalist with Pinnack News Service. and gathering content for a civil rights investigation.
And hand them the yellow card.
Yeah, or recently, I've been a lot of people have been asking me because I've been handing them business cards.
Well, I was going to ask you if you got any extras.
I got this made up on the internet. I went to the site or whatever it is that I don't know if you guys can see that. It's got my phone number on it, so hopefully people won't be calling me. But they've been wondering what the card says. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So the card, it says my first name, my last initial. So Jeff G. I'm still not giving him my full name. Investigative journalist, civil rights investigator, open government investigator. My phone number, Pinac News, Be the Media, photography is not a crime is what it says. So now I've given them a card. So, it's going to look really bad on them if I'm actually do get prosecuted, right? So you got to protect yourself from the prosecution first. And then if you later on you want to enforce your civil rights, and make them where they don't do this to other people, and you sue them, you have to have good facts on your side. You have to have the law on your side. You have to show that you're the reasonable, rational.
And you need to understand the laws in your state, because Florida has different laws than Texas. So, we're protected by 3802.
You guys got it good out there. You got single party consent as far as recording, and you've got the ID thing where you don't have to show, you don't have to identify yourself until after you've been lawfully arrested.
Lawfully arrested, yeah. Which they try to get aware. They try to tell us all that kind of stuff. We don't know what we're talking about, but yeah, we do. Because the fifth district court confirmed that we were right and you're wrong. But here's
with Philip Turner, right? With the Turner driver.
Yeah, Turner versus Driver. Yeah. So I've showed this before. I don't know if you've seen it, but you know how they like to go through your pockets illegally and get your wallet? Here's my wallet. My wallet just for them. And I keep a little bit of money. So if I need to stop off and have a little break while they're trying to, just hang out for a while while trying to follow you. But if they search me illegally,
there you go.
But so far, none of them taking me up on it.
Yeah,
it's there, but I haven't been able to use it. But we're lucky here. But basically, make sure you know what the laws are, and especially lately, I've been seeing know what the laws are on the ID, but know what the trespassing laws are, and
loitering and prowling laws,
and loitering and prowling. And the boundaries.
Standing on the public sidewalk is during broad daylight, and there's nothing wrong with going out at night too. You just put yourself a little bit more risk going out at night. There's nothing wrong with that, but and you tell them that your name is Jeff. You tell them what you're doing. You tell them who you are. My name is Jeff. I'm an investigative journalist. Tell them what you're doing. I'm gathering information for a civil rights investigation that I'm working on. That's it. That's all I tell them.
And you might invoke your fifth, so it might help you.
Yeah, that's another tactic that I'm going to change. As soon as they go to, as soon as the first thing, my first response to, do you have any ID on you? I have my automatic response to that is, am I being detained? And a lot of times they'll say, no, you're not being detained. However, we are conducting an investigation. We got a phone call from so-and-so that says you're out here taking photographs. Is taking photographs a crime? No, it's not a crime. However, it is suspicious.
It's amazing how many of them use that to try to step all over your rights and ignore what the laws are.
This day and age, with the things that are going on nowadays, you're out here taking photographs. We need to have your ID. We need ID. We need to know how you are. I've already told you who I am. My name is Jeff. I'm an investigative journalist with Connect News Services. I'm gathering content for a civil rights investigation. And since you're conducting an investigation into my lawful activity, I'm going to go ahead and invoke my right to remain silent. I'm going to invoke my right to have my attorney present during this investigation. Let me know when I'm free to go. And that's the way I'm going to start doing it from now on. As soon as they say we're conducting an investigation and start asking for ID, I'm going to say that. I'm going to say, I'm going to invoke my right to remain silent. I'm going to invoke my right to have my attorney present. And I'll go into which which amendment it is. I don't go into which code it is. I'm just invoking my right to remain silent. I'm invoking my right to have my attorney present during this investigation. Let me know when I'm free to go, and then the questions will continue from there. So you just say you don't have any ID on you? Let me know when I'm free to go. Did you drive here today? I'd like to be free to go. Let me know when I'm free to go. And that's just the way it's going to be from now. You know.
Well, I've always been kind of a minimalist on the information and the talking. I know some of the auditors that I really like a lot. They talk a lot, but they're very good at what they do.
Yeah.
They know what to say, how to say it, when to say it, and I'm not that type of person.
I'm not either. That's why I have I have my script that I stick to.
Yeah, and I'm working kind of on a new script with different variations of what I might say at the very beginning, but it will be very limited, and it will not depend on the situation, and then I'll cut it off. You know, but it's going to be cooling off here pretty soon, and the wife's doing much better, so I'm going to be out there again pretty soon, and we'll see how that works out.
Glad your wife is doing better. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say, well, I talk too much. Well, if you pay attention, all I'm doing is saying the same thing over and over again. I'm not really saying too much.
Well, that annoys me is when and this police officer walks up and asks you this and this and this and this, and then the next police officer asks you the same damn thing over and over again, and the next one over and over. Look, I have already answered that. If you want answers, go talk to him. You know. Yeah,
yeah, and the other thing too is you see it in my videos, you see in all the other videos. I'll tell them, like I said, my name is Jeff, and I'm an investigative journalist with Penn News Services, gathering content for a civil rights investigation that I'm working on, an investigative story that I'm working on. Next cop will show up, and he'll say to the first cop that you've already talked to and told him all that information, will say to the second cop, yeah, he's here. He's refusing to give us any information or tell us anything about what he's doing. It's like he's refusing to give us any information.
Being uncooperative.
Yeah.
Combative.
Yeah. Right. So
I want to get on to EOG. Is there anything else that you want to talk about today that you want to get out there today?
About Thomas? Yeah, man.
No, I mean, is there anything else before we get to Thomas? Is there anything that
some folks have asked me? I've been requested what kind of equipment do you use? And I can show you. This is a Canon EOS camera. I don't know how well you can see that.
Yeah, we see it fine.
And then on top of the Canon EOS here, I have a Ion Pro action camera. I also use a GoPro. Recently, my son has confiscated my GoPro and using it, so I'm going to go back to my Ion Pro. But what this does is it allows you to take still photographs with the Canon and record video, pretty good quality 1080p video, wide angle lens. So it gives you a better angle. You can see more of what's going on in the videos. So you can see wider and higher up with this. You can also have this recording too at the same time. The more cameras you have recording, the better, because one of them is likely to fail. Or if the cops do arrest you and they take your stuff, they can, they're known to delete stuff and make things disappear. And I always have at least one device. This is highly recommended to anybody, especially now that I don't have Thomas with me. If you don't have anybody with you, you should always have one device that's live streaming.
Right.
At least one device that's live streaming. So if you do get arrested and they take your cameras, that they can get access to the SD cards and these two cameras and make things disappear that could save you from being put in prison or in jail, make sure you're live streaming. It's got to be a live streaming device. I'm not going to go into what my live streaming device is because I know that maybe there's some law enforcement that'll watch this. I'd rather them not know what it is. But I will tell you that have at least one device live streaming, at least one.
And I want to remind everybody, and it's really a lot of times with the new people, and I know it's easy to hold the phone that way than it is that way, but this way you lose a lot of what's going on.
Yeah.
And that can be important. This way you catch a lot more of it.
Yeah, please.
What you miss can put you in jail or get you out of jail.
That's right. Vertical video syndrome. Nobody likes vertical video syndrome, but the most important thing to do is to record. That's the most important. The other thing, you just brought up something. This, it's got the strap here, which I hang around my neck, which is important. If you watch, so it hangs around my neck, and I'm hands free.
Right.
So when the law enforcement's approaching me, it doesn't come across on the video a lot, but I'm always like this.
Well, actually, I've seen you do like that a lot of times.
Yeah, and I'll actually put my hands in front of the camera. Hey guys, how are you? And I'll show that my hands are empty. And I'll even tell them, nothing in my hands. So this leaves you free. So that's an important thing too. So at least, so you won't get try to at least lessen your chances of getting shot.
Yeah, and in this day and age, we know how important that is.
Yeah, in this day and age, the way things are with these law enforcement officers, how trigger happy they are.
I'm sure you understand how things are these days.
But
they like to use those words and sentences that direct you in, control you into the saying or agreeing with things. Like,
try to.
I know you understand this. You know.
Yeah. Try to have as many recording devices as you can. Try to make sure you're lawfully present. If you're on a public sidewalk, that's the best. I like to have it hands-free, like I showed you with this. I can hang this around my neck and have it hands-free. This type of ion action camera, or the GoPro, is the type of camera that you can turn it on and it records, and the battery lasts about 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours actually with this Ion Pro. And live stream. Always have your live streaming.
Yeah. I don't like seeing it as much of the live streaming on YouTube as I've seen, because and that's probably the wrong thing. I don't have time to sit and watch all those people. And I'd like to see what's going on, but I don't have time to sit and watch them. And I know a lot of people do. So they're kind of covered. I can't watch them because I don't have time, but there's always going to be people watching them.
Right.
So it's okay, but I prefer not to live stream too much.
All right. Let me make a specific point about the live streaming. When I say live streaming, it doesn't necessarily mean that it goes live onto somebody else to view it. Streaming off-site is a better way to say it. Make sure you're streaming something off-site that's stored off-site so that it can't be deleted.
Yeah, and that's where I was going.
That's a good point. I don't like to put my videos out there immediately after an interaction with law enforcement. I like to give law enforcement, I'm going to give stuff away here, and I'm sure they're watching, but they probably already know. I'll hold the video back for 3 or 4 days. I like to give them a chance to write their reports and lie on their reports. And
well, you're not giving anything new. We've talked about it many times with other auditors.
Hold the video back at least maybe a week or so. Sometimes it's hard to do. You want to get it out there. It's a good video.
Yeah, well, you got one right now I wanted to talk about, but we can't because it's not ready yet.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's okay. That's all right. Yeah. People will be seeing that soon enough.
Right. I'm doing some follow-up with that. I'm doing some public records requests to make it a more interesting video, to get their written reports like we were just talking about. I'm holding back on the video. I'm not putting it out there. I'm making public records requests for their whatever written reports they had, all the emails that they sent in regards to the incident. But basically, I can tell people what happened. I made a public records request at a college, and it was typical nonsense. It was a state college, paid for with tax dollars. It's public employees that work there. They told me that I couldn't be there because it was private property, private institution, private property. Can't make a public records request, and we need to see your ID to make sure you're not a pedophile or a child molester. I responded in a not so typical honor your oath fashion with that one. So that video will be coming out soon.
Well, quickly back to the streaming. It's important to stream, and I don't want to confuse anybody about what we've been saying. I'm looking at different options because we lost Bamboozer, which we were all using a lot.
Yeah.
It's good to have other people seeing what's going on live so they can react to it quickly if need be, or at least have access to it so they know what happened if you're lost. All of a sudden the cops got you and nobody knows about it. you need somebody to kind of back you up and check up on you. So I'm still looking into some of that. I'm looking into a way to set up a system where I can have 5 or 10 people that have access to it. And 5 or 10, I say, because I know people are busy, but I figure out of that 5 or 10, there's going to be 1 or 2 that at any given time can look into it, especially if you've already told them, look, I'm going to be at such and such in 30 minutes. I should be out of there in an hour. And if you don't hear from me, check up on me on the live stream, see what happened, type deal. We still don't have any really good answers to all that yet, but we're still trying to.
That's a very good idea. And sometimes I don't do that. That's one of the things that Thomas taught me to do, is slow down a little bit and think about things. I'm very blessed because I'm with Photography is Not a Crime, and we have our newsroom. That's Photography is Not a Crime. That's a confidential newsroom because, like with any other newsroom, you know what, people getting the scoop on you. So what I'll do is I'll go in there before I head out, and I'll type in there, hey guys, I'm going to be at such and such location today doing such and such thing. If you don't hear by me from a certain time, you know, check with the local PD in that area.
Yeah. So. Well, anybody can do that though. I mean, you can just have a chat set up on your phone with the certain people you're close to in the organization. They could be any place in the country or even in the world. And you just text them saying, look, I'm going to be at such and such. And if you don't hear from me in an hour, you know, something's wrong.
Yeah. The 2 best people that I've experienced with looking out for you and helping you out is David Warden, who's now Houston, and Teresa Richard.
Yeah. Well, Jack and Todd we're all in that group. We have our little chat going, and we're all in that. We all look out for each other. A lot of times I'll call Dave and say, look, he's getting jacked up over here. You know, he's got a bigger channel and more contacts than I do. Yeah. So I'll call him and let him know.
He's got a big YouTube channel now. Dave is definitely, I tell you what, my last arrest, and hopefully my last arrest, in St. Augustine, David had the word out before I even got to the jail. And I was right there next to the jail. I was only 3 or 4 miles away from the jail. By the time I got to the jail, they were already saying, man, we're getting phone calls about you. So
yeah, and I've done that several with some of the other people that I keep an eye on. I've put it out there, look, he's getting jacked up. I put it in the text and I'll let them know, or I'll call them and say, hey, you know, this is happening. And I have other people from around the country that call me and tell me, oh, well, so-and-so is getting jacked up. Have you seen this yet? No, I'll be at the house in 5 minutes. I'll check into it, you know. And we'll get the word out to the proper people that need to know. Yeah. And that's one thing good about this community is as it grows, we have more resources like that to deal with, you know. Right. And you have more people to pick from that you trust.
Right. Yeah. You gotta trust them, man. You gotta trust them. You gotta be careful who you go out with too.
Yeah, I got a new guy that's asking to go out, and I think I'm going to let him go out with me once I get back out there again and things cool off. But I'm not going to go out with him alone the first couple of times. Yeah, and we'll see how that works out. Yeah, he's also an ex-police officer, which makes me wonder, you know. But we've got other ex-police officers that I trust that are doing this because they got out of it for the right reasons. Yeah, you know? So we'll see.
There's a couple of Jacksonville sheriff's officers. I'm not going to say their name or anything, but you know, I've sat down and had coffee with them, and they tell me they're older guys, you know, the older guys, old school guys. We appreciate what you're doing. We like what you're doing. We think you do it the right way and everything like that. Matter of fact, years ago when I was going into the library, because I'd heard that they were searching everybody's bags, I went into the library, and they weren't allowing people with concealed weapons going in there. And you have every right in Florida to go into a library with a concealed weapon if you have a permit. So I had taken my Glock, instead of carrying it on my hip, I had it in a bag, and I knew that they were going to search. One of my older days, kind of more mature things. I wouldn't do this nowadays, but not shown in the video, when I went in there, one of those officers that liked me was one that was called to the scene. And he kind of pulled me to the side and he said, let's make this off camera. He said, but just to let you know, we're going to have to trespass you. We're being asked to trespass you. We're going to trespass you. And I want you to know that it will turn from a misdemeanor to a felony since you have a firearm. He said, so you don't want to get arrested for this. So, that's, so, there are some really cool cops that look out for them. Do the right
One of the reasons I pulled away from, I still work with the OCT and those guys, and I still support the Second Amendment, but I try not to mix them because there's so much more aspect to how they can change the charges on you because of that. Yeah. So I try to be careful about that. I've defended the Second Amendment for so long, and there's already large groups out there doing that. That's why I concentrate on one. I always still do both, and I'm out there with both, but I don't usually carry.
I quit doing the Second Amendment stuff. I haven't been doing that in the last few years. I quit when I found out through the public records request that they were sending false information about me being a sovereign citizen, and there was a couple other things where they were saying false arrest.
He's always armed.
Yeah, they were saying he's always armed. He does not have a concealed carry permit. They actually said that in the report. They said that I was arrested in Jacksonville. This never happened. They said I was arrested in Jacksonville with false passport and false ID, and I fought with the cops when I was arrested. Never happened.
Yeah.
And then there was another one here in St. Johns County where I was filming a traffic stop where they were searching a vehicle, and I later on did a public records request for the arrest report, and I'm looking at the arrest report, and they got me listed as a passenger in the vehicle. And this was a vehicle where the guy was arrested for having like meth in there and all these other kind of crazy drugs that are bad drugs, the hardcore stuff, and a bunch of weapons. And now this stuff is being distributed around the state as a dossier or a bolo on me, and all these other cops who don't know who I am are seeing this.
Some of the cops will stop at nothing, man.
Yeah, so I quit doing the open carry because I was afraid I was going to get shot. The other reason that I quit was because Thomas said if I didn't stop, he would beat my ass. So Thomas told me, you are going to stop doing that damn Second Amendment bullshit, because if you don't, either the cops are going to shoot you or I'm going to beat your ass. Okay, Thomas, I appreciate it. Yeah,
who was that?
Thomas.
Thomas, okay.
Yeah, he said, I'll beat your ass. He said, I might break my hand on your big old head, but I'm going to. In other words, he was concerned about me. He wanted me to stop. So
yeah, well, I know I in our discussions, I don't want to give anybody the wrong impression. I never got the impression that he had any problems with the Second Amendment, but that's not what we ever talked about, really. We always talked about the what pertains to our audits, which that reminds me, I got a question for you, and then we got to get to EOG.
Okay.
You don't call it First Amendment audits anymore.
Right.
Why did you change? Tell us what you changed it to and why you changed it.
Honestly, one of the reasons I changed it was to distinguish myself a little bit. And the other reason I changed it is because audit kind of got a bad name. It's gotten a bad name and kind of in the local media, it's gotten a bad name, and I think wrongly. So I'm not saying that I think it's right, but it's gotten a bad name with all the public employees. They say these auditors. And I think civil rights, the title Civil Rights Investigation is a more accurate description of what we do, or at least
more descriptive.
It's a better description of what I do and my purpose for going out there. I'm not doing this to just go out there and harass public employees and get a good video, a viral video. I do it to go out there and document and investigate public employees' reaction to our civil rights and how we have to acclimate them to our public right, our civil rights. How are they going to handle a person engaged in constitutionally protected activity? And hopefully to follow up after the video, after the encounter with public records requests, find out what they're saying, how they're handling, what they're doing it, and try to get them to change and do the right thing and respect our rights. So that's
part of this process, and I want to say it again, folks, it's not just that initial contact and exposing that one bad police officer, 2 or 3, in that initial contact. It's to expose the depth of the corruption.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't stop with that initial contact. It keeps going.
And one of the things I'll tell people to do, I mean, the guys that are already out there making the videos and doing the videos, after it happens, like I said, we already talked about hold your video back 3 or 4 days. Allow them to get their story, straight, so to speak, and in other words, to lie on their reports. Do a public records request for the following things. Ask for, of course, any written reports about regarding the incident that took place, the interaction. Ask for all emails sent or received by the agency that you encountered, say if it was the Panama City Police Department. Ask for all emails sent or received that has your name, your YouTube channel's name, or anybody that you're associated with it in. Ask for those emails, all of them. Ask for the radio traffic. Ask for the phone calls, and get all that stuff. And that's really interesting. It can make them for a more compelling video, a more interesting video, and it gives you a better idea of how they're responding. If you're having any kind of effect on them, if they're just saying, "Oh, this is just one of those assholes that likes to get interaction with the cops and make videos, screw him," or if they're actually discussing, "Hey, one of our officers handled this improperly," that type of thing. So,
yeah. All right, on to EOG. We already talked about how you met him, but there's so many things about EOG. I don't even hardly know where to start. I'll start by me and EOG spent many hours talking about what we do and how to do it and the philosophies behind it and et cetera. But I always found him to be very open, at least, and maybe more open than a lot of people about what's going on, and wanting to discuss it. Very committed to it. And so I really don't know what to say except for tell me your thoughts about EOG.
EOG, well, first of all, I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression about what I was just talking about a few minutes ago. He was fully supported the Second Amendment. He was just against me getting shot by a cop.
And I can vouch for that because me and him, we've talked about that with me, why I stopped. And he said, "I'm glad you're not doing it that way anymore because it's just dangerous." But I didn't stop for his reasons. I stopped for my reasons because they could twist it and turn it to the charges so easily.
Got a cat down here making noise. Knock it off. Batting something around. Well, Thomas was, a good Southern gentleman. Can you hear that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
He's a good Southern gentleman, honest guy. He cared about the right things. He cared about our civil rights. He cared about. He loved animals. He really the most anger I've ever seen out of him, displayed out of him, is when he watched a video or heard of an animal getting hurt or a woman getting hurt. Like that. There was a video in Tallahassee where this young girl got pulled over for DUI or something like that, and the cops beat the crap out of her. Boy, did he get angry about that! Really, really upset. So that's the type of guy that he was. He was really good guy, really great friend. Do anything for you, and he really was thoughtful about things. He really taught me, for example, to slow down, think it through, take it easy. He really influenced me a lot on the stuff that
I'm trying to partake people, especially the new ones, to slow down and take it easy.
Yeah.
Think about what's going on.
Right. Slow down. He taught me to slow down, take it easy. For example, we go out together, and I was used to doing stuff on my own at first, and when I started going with him, he was like, "We need to stop and get something to eat." All right, we'll hit the drive-thru and we'll keep going. He's like, No. We're going to go to Popeyes. That was his favorite place. We're going to get something to eat.
Popeyes.
And we're going to take it easy. Slow down. Think it through. I'm sure that he's kept me out of, a lot of situations where, maybe I could have got arrested, and maybe I don't think, I wouldn't have done anything unlawful. But maybe I was moving too fast, and maybe I would give them just enough wiggle room to arrest me and have some sort of prosecution stick.
Well, I tell people it's okay to hesitate. If you get into a situation where it's moving too fast, you're not sure, then hesitate. Stop for a couple of seconds or so if you have to, and think it through. Or just stop talking. Call it, that's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
We're over with, If you get over your head, if you have to, if you're getting over your head, ID and get out of there. you know, whatever it takes not to get arrested, because
Yep.
you don't have to get arrested to prove something.
Yeah.
If you want to get arrested, which I don't know why you want to, you know, go ahead, but you don't have to get arrested to prove your point.
Nope.
And it's going to get you more money if you want a lawsuit, but that's not the point. It's
yeah, and good luck with that, by the way, too.
Yeah.
Good luck with the lawsuits, because they abuse the system. You file a civil rights lawsuit for an arrest that's obviously a bad arrest, and the opposing counsel, the attorneys for whatever agency it might be, they get tax dollars, they get all the money they want. They're ruthless, they're immoral, and they don't care, and they will abuse the system. Talk about abuse of process. One of the things that they really like to abuse is the discovery. They will swamp you. They will inundate you with such a just overwhelming discovery. There's no possible way for you to comply with it. Yeah. Every email that you've ever written, basically, your tax returns for the last 15 years, every video you've ever produced that has any public official in it, every public records request you've ever made, you know, every email and communication between you and Carlos Miller, every email communication between you and PNP News. It's just, it was crazy. So, but anyway, back to EOG. You know, another thing with him is when he said, you probably see it in some of my videos, he'll tell, when the cops ask him what he's doing out here, he says, I am here to document possible civil rights violations to this man that may be committed against this man over here. He would tell me all the time, he said, Jeff, I am out there to protect you. I'm out there to have video to protect you. And that was his main purpose of being out. He really was out there looking out for me. He was a really good friend. And there was a lot of times where I was like, man, we got to get you in front of the camera more often. We got to put you in front of the camera more often, because whenever you show up, people love it. They flip out. EOG. And he would always say, I appreciate it, but I'd rather not be. I'd rather not be in front of the camera. I'm here to protect you. And that's really, truly what he was doing.
Well, I've thought about trying to not step into his shoes, but use some of his, basically get the idea from him to do that for some of the people that I work with. Sometimes I just go out with them and have all my paperwork and do it like he does, but I don't think I could do it like he does or as good. So I just, when I do that, I just have to do it my way. And because many times I've been out there just to protect the guys. You know, I might have been in a situation where I couldn't walk that much because I've had some issues. So I would just drop me off close by where we're going to do this. I'll be in the area. I'll be watching. I won't have to walk a mile. You know, I'll have my camera ready. I'll walk up if I need to and say something, or put my camera out and say, well, it's not just him that's got the camera, it's me, you know. And if I have to ID myself to get this video out, then I'll ID myself. You know, they may arrest you, but I'm gonna have my video because I'm on ID, and then I'm gonna arrest me.
And that's what Thomas would do. He would, you know, he would show his ID if they really demanded his ID, he would show it. You know, because he was there documenting what was happening. So ultimately,
that's what it comes down to, being able to document what's going on.
I also called him my research guru. He actually called himself the research guru. He kind of gave himself that name.
Yeah, but I'm not good at research, man. I hope I find somebody that really loves doing that stuff one of these days.
Thomas was excellent at it, man. He'd always say, "I'll run that to the ground for you." That was his saying. I got a cat attacking my feet. So, you know, I would say, "Hey, Thomas, you know, I'm working today. Can you do some research on this topic and get back with me?" And he loved it. I mean, it was like one of the things he always said to me. He said, "Jeff, you know, before I met you, I was sitting around in this old folks' apartment complex, just wasting away." Yeah. He said, you know, I don't need to be on video. He said, I'm here to protect you, and you know, you get me out, you get my brain working, you get me moving around, and it's giving me stuff to do. And but he could find stuff on the internet about topics that, you know, I could never find. I mean, I could if I had the patience that he has. And
I don't have the patience for it.
Yeah. And of course, it was a typical guy relationship. We're driving down the road. We're always talking smack to one another, always, cutting each other down and cutting at each other. You get the best of me sometimes. I get the best of him sometimes.
Yeah, what's wrong with us guys?
Yeah. Matter of fact, one time Eric Friday was in the car with us, the attorney for Florida Carry. He's really helped me out a lot. Eric Friday's a great guy. So is Andrew Bonderud. But Eric was in the car with us, and we were coming back from Orlando, and me and Thomas were razzing on each other, and I was getting the best of Thomas, and Eric Friday was sitting over in their passenger seat, and he was just like, he looked at me, he says, "You're mean to Thomas." I thought that was funny, but like one of the jokes I always like to tell people about Thomas, me and Thomas go on a road trip. This is my impersonation of Thomas on a road trip. I'm hot. I'm cold. I'm hungry. He was asleep. So,
well, I always regret that I didn't get a chance to work with him.
Yeah.
As far as in person, but all those hours that we spent on the phone, I'll always remember. I really liked him and respected him, and I'm sorry he's gone, but I know he was suffering too. So,
yeah. He was a Coast Guard veteran, U.S. Army veteran. He had cancer when he was a young man. He survived the cancer.
I'm a cancer survivor.
Oh, cool. And he had open heart surgery. He was diabetic, arthritic, had arthritis in his neck. And, whenever I went out with him, when it wasn't just me, he and I went out, I really had to have him in mind, let him set the pace when we were walking, really try to make it where he wasn't out in the heat too long, and so he didn't have to walk too far. And I kind of had to look out for him and everything, but it was definitely well worth it.
Well, that's kind of where I was, and to a certain extent still am now that, I'm going to get back out there. So I've been going out at night walking, and hopefully pretty soon my wife will be in enough recovered from her surgery enough to where we can go do some more together and help me get back my legs in shape. And it seems like the swelling in my feet has gotten better, so that means I can walk further now. So
yeah,
we'll get there. We have been on here for a long time. I think we could probably talk all damn day, but
the guy that's been making all the noise.
The video is already a lot longer than I